No.
Oh my goodness!
Oh no!
Shit! Oh my goodness!
Oh no!
Oh my
Oh
goodness!
no!
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Hassan's Hits. I'm here to talk about the top 5 fights in UFC history. UFC being around for 30 years now, we have had some of the greatest fights go down. These are the top 5 fights, in my opinion. Some of these sometimes get flip-flopped, but in my opinion, these are the top 5 fights to ever grace the octagon. At number 5, we have Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard 2, the rematch. This fight could have been stopped multiple times, especially in the first round when Frankie Edgar, who was the smaller fighter, took many shots, got knocked down, and looked like he was out multiple times. Came back in the second round, hurt Gray Maynard, and they went back and forth for the entirety of the fight. This was complete chaos in a nutshell. The legendary Frankie Edgar basically made his way to UFC gold in this fight because as it ended up a draw, he ended up knocking out Gray Maynard in the trilogy. That fight went down in January 2011 at UFC 125. In at number 4, we have Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum in April of 2019 at UFC 236. Israel Adesanya met Kelvin Gastelum in a pivotal matchup to face the champion Robert Whittaker. Now, this fight was super interesting because Israel Adesanya is one of the greatest strikers to ever grace the octagon, and he does not like to get hit, obviously. That's the game plan, hit and don't get hit. And he is a superb defensive fighter. In this fight, everything went out the window. Kelvin Gastelum put him in a dogfight, in a fight of will. And as you guys recall, if you saw the fight, Israel Adesanya went into the 5th round saying he was willing to die in that octagon to win the fight. This is the fight that Israel Adesanya showed he is a dog, showed that he has, that championship grit in him. And this is what propelled him to beat one of my favorite fighters in Robert Whittaker later on that year to become the middleweight champion of the world. At number 3, we have Chad Mendes versus Jose Aldo 2 in the rematch. Of course, Jose Aldo knocking out Chad Mendes in WEC in their first matchup. In the rematch, you had a guy in Conor McGregor making a name for himself, and you had these two guys, Jose Aldo, the king of the division. He hadn't lost in close to a decade. He was controlling the entire division. Chad Mendes made him earn this fight because it turned into just a bar fight. Literally, like these guys were throwing hands. It was mano a mano. They met in the middle of the octagon and just threw hands. You had a lot of scrambles. You had a lot of things go down in that fight. Jose Aldo ended up doing enough to win the fight. He uttered these words right after winning the fight. He is the king of the division. Chad Mendes is the prince, and Conor McGregor is the joker. Of course, these words would come back to bite him because that joker ended up taking out Chad Mendes and Jose Aldo in a matter of a year and some change. Conor McGregor propelled himself in a seek and destroy mission to UFC gold. This fight, of course, took place in October of 2014 at UFC 179. At number 2, we have a fight that could be looked at as the number 1 greatest fight of all time. Now, for me, I have one number 1 that has stood the test of time, and that's coming up. I'm pretty sure if you're well versed in the UFC and in MMA, you know the fight I'm about to get to at number 1. Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald 2 The fight went down in July of 2015 at UFC 189. The same card as Conor McGregor taking out Chad Mendes. And this fight turned into a battle of will. Robbie Lawler was throwing bombs at Rory McDonald. Rory McDonald, being the slick fighter that he is, a well-rounded fighter with great striking himself, Rory McDonald was in that fight till the end. The infamous fourth round in which they went toe-to-toe, mano-a-mano, and at the end of the round stared each other down, both in a pool of blood. Robbie Lawler ended up breaking Rory's nose in the fifth round and getting it done via knockout. At number 1, we have the greatest fight in UFC history, the greatest fight in MMA history, one of the greatest fights in combat sports history. I'm talking about Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson in their first fight in September of 2013 at UFC 165. The interesting thing about this fight was Jon Jones was the young GOAT, the guy who looked unbeatable and was just running through legendary fighters. And so it was like, who can give him an actual fight? Alexander Gustafsson met him when it came to height, reach, and a lot of things. They matched up pretty well. This is one of the few fights that I honestly felt like both of these guys might have to get the ambulance, out of the arena. Like, they had nothing else to give. They put every ounce of energy they had into this fight. And both of them, survived significant strikes that it was just like, how are they left standing? You got my top 5 right there. 3 fights, I should say, for an honorable mention. And that would be Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Zhang Wei Li. We also have Cub Swanson versus Doo Ho Choi. And we can't leave out Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonnar. That's the fight that, obviously on The Ultimate Fighter, Spike days, the fight that basically got the wheels rolling for the UFC and made it a profitable organization. If you guys have a different type of list, if you guys agree with my list, let me know. Maybe there's some even more old school fights that I didn't mention and maybe they're in your top 5. Let me know, comment, like, subscribe. I appreciate it. Peace.